Hello again. Welcome to the second episode of BQChats. I'm really excited to have Megan Favorite of the Missouri District, where she had an awesome 12-year quiz career, and she is currently working as the experienced quiz master. She's also the Hazelwood beginner coach, which she has an awesome beginner team as well. She wears many hats and she has a lot of great things to say. I'm really excited to talk to her. She's also involved heavily in the Urshan Bible Quizzing class. So I'm really excited myself to learn more about that. If you guys are ready, here we go. Megan Favorite, how are you doing?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm great. So good to have you on. I've been really excited to do this, to get the second podcast put together. The first one came together pretty well, pretty quickly. So been really excited to just get to the next one and keep this thing rolling. How are things down in Missouri?
Missouri's great. Missouri's raining right now, but I love Missouri.
Good deal. All right, so why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit. Just give us a rundown of your quiz career. Tell me about little 6-year-old Megan, and then give me the story.
Yeah, so I started quizzing when I was 6 years old. I actually moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania when I was 4 years old, and we didn't know anything about quizzing then. And we had none of that in Pittsburgh. So we moved here, and my mom and Sister Marlette and Sister Brickle started the quizzing program at our church, Florissant Valley Apostolic Church. And they all started their oldest kids in quizzing. So I got to watch my brother, and my brother is 4 years older than me. My sister's 2 years older than me. Got to watch both of them quiz. And then I started when I was 6 years old. And my mom had a rule that whenever you were a junior quizzer, you had to quiz all your years, you had to learn all your verses, and then whenever you were a senior quizzer, it was your choice. So for 6 years and juniors, I learned my verses, and I was not a very good quizzer at all. I don't think I hit the buzzer for like the first 3 years, maybe even longer.
Really?
I was not a great quizzer at that point. But we were homeschooled, so mom was like, you're learning all the verses and you can go to the tournaments if you want to, but you're going to learn the verses no matter what. So who's going to learn the verses and not go to the tournament? We had no clue what we were doing, literally not a clue at all. It hadn't been at our church in years and years, and they were just kind of like starting the program from scratch. So I remember like the panic, because we like knew our verses pretty well, and we got to the tournament and realized this is so much bigger than just learning the verses. And I remember my mom being like, how do we even do this? How are we supposed to win? What does that mean? Like, she was so confused by everything. And I remember being like really embarrassed by her at certain tournaments, because she would go around and like ask all the coaches all these questions and like, how do you do this? What does this mean? How does that work? And then even afterwards, we would go to restaurants and she would just like table hop asking different coaches like how they coach and how they run practices. And I remember being like,
I can really, really relate to your mom. 100%. Been there, done that.
She picked brains at every single tournament for years before we figured out what we were doing. And so I'm very grateful for that. But quizzed juniors for 6 years, and I didn't really start doing anything until my mom started bribing me. So when I got brave enough to kind of hit the buzzer, she was like, okay, if you get on the all tournament team, you will get a Polly Pocket. And I was like, hold on. And I got on the all tournament team every possible chance. And me and my teammate at the time, Hannah Marlette, we hoarded our Polly Pockets. And we had like way too many. And so that was how they got us into like actually liking quizzing.
Okay, time out for myself and other people listening that don't know. What's a Polly Pocket?
Okay, so Polly Pocket is a very small little doll, and she has rubber clothes, and she lives in a little house, and she's got shoes, and I had thousands of them. There's a pool party one, there's a mall one. Oh my gosh, I can literally remember getting those Polly Pockets and being like, I am on the top of the world. Like, it does not get better than this. Well, but there are different types of Polly Pockets. This isn't a Polly Pocket podcast, so
it's not. It's not, but it is really interesting because I have a little girl that is starting in quizzing, and I've got to figure out some good bribes. So I might have to see if she's interested in Polly Pockets.
Honestly, I support the bribery. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, tangent. Keep going.
So I was really fortunate because I had basically the same teammates for a really long time. I quizzed with a few different teams when I was really young, when we were still kind of figuring out like which quizzers worked well together and how the strategy would work. I quizzed with my sister for a few years. There's a lot of Hannahs. My sister's name is Hannah Favorite. We quizzed together in juniors, and then I quizzed with another Hannah Marlette, and then I quizzed with another Hannah Frickle. And at one point, there were two Hannahs on my same team. So when I say Hannah, I'm going to have to clarify. There's quite a few. But I quizzed most of my quiz career, I think probably 10 years, 9 or 10 years with Hannah Marlette. And I just generally was never without a Hannah. And I feel really fortunate to have had the same team and a few of the same coaches and really got to stay in one place, because I know that can be difficult if you have to move around and there are different challenges with, getting new teammates and learning how to work with new teams. And so I was really lucky to have a great program at my church, great pastoral support. I mean, my pastors were always there for me. I will never, ever forget. I am still so mad about it to this day. So my first year of intermediate was 2011. And we had taken a year off, which a lot of people don't know this about me, but I did take a year off. And I'm such a hypocrite because I tell people all the time, don't you dare take a year off. Because most of the time when people take a year off, they never start back up again.
Right.
But I did take a year off, which would have been my first year to be eligible for intermediate.
Gotcha.
So that was 2010. I didn't quiz, but my mom at that point was becoming an official in the district. So she was the junior quiz master. And I wanted to go to tournaments still. I was like, well, if she's going, I should go. And she's like, no, if you're not quizzing, you don't get to go. Even if it was at my church, she would not let me go. She would say, nope, you have to stay home. Only quizzers get to benefit from the fellowship. And so I'm thankful for that because I got back in the next year because I wanted to be part of it. And 2011, it took us a little while. And I find this very often with quizzers when they go into a new division. It takes like probably half the season to acclimate to that, with some exceptions. There's some amazing quizzers who just move up and do perfectly, but it took us like half the season to kind of really get into intermediate quizzing and learn how to do it well. And then at nationals, we got undefeated in round 1, and we were like so excited because we had never done it before, and we never did it again, but we had never done it before. We were so excited, and it was in Cincinnati that year, I think Cincinnati, Ohio. And Pastor Dugas was so excited for us that he came all the way to Cincinnati to watch the championship round. And I was like, oh my gosh, such pressure. Like, he spent all this money, all this time. He's coming up to watch us. Yeah, I absolutely bombed. I came very close to airing out. I think I had 4 wrong in each of those games. And Matthew Bell and the team from Denham Springs, Louisiana, Matthew and Allison, beat us twice to get first place that year. So I was happy to have the support of my pastor, but I was very struck by that and really never forgot that.
Oh, goodness.
And even Pastor Graham came my last year of nationals. He came actually a lot to nationals and always supported me. And it's something that I took for granted for a really long time because I didn't realize like it is harder sometimes for some churches to get that support from their church family. So I was really, really blessed to have had that.
That's good. Yeah, we've been very blessed as well with pastoral support, and it's so important, especially financially supportive. And we don't really have to recruit for quizzing because our pastor gets up there after every tournament and hoops and hollers and MCs and gives out the ribbons and trophies and everything. And he's 100% just crazy about quizzing. So really
That's
appreciate
awesome.
that. So it's done a lot. We have multiple quizzers, younger quizzers, that say like the reason that they wanted to quiz was because Pastor made such a big deal out of it, which is just fantastic.
That's great. That's such a great example.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then you moved on to experienced, right?
Yes. I was so scared to move to the experienced division. It's so funny because I find so many intermediate quizzers saying the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so hard. Like, they spend so long deliberating, and Brother Foger is so scary, and I was petrified of him. but it's amazing because I feel like we need the intermediate division. A quizzer needs to go through that division in order to love the experienced division. That's really how it was for me. I loved intermediate. I only quizzed intermediate for 2 years, but I had so much fun, and I was like, all right, like these are the good old days. It's just gonna get worse from here. I'm not gonna be able to do well. It's gonna be hard. But it was so it's pretty dynamic, the shift from intermediate to experience. And it does take a little while to get used to that in many different ways. Because in intermediates, sometimes you're still, maybe your parents are still helping you with it, or maybe it's more of them forcing you to do it still. But when you get to experience, it really takes that personal dedication in order to do well. And I think I love watching quizzers. I love watching the quizzers in Missouri, even younger ones, make that transition, and I can tell like just that shift in them, and it's really exciting. So I loved the experience division. I quizzed experienced for 4 years, so 2013, 2014, 15, and 16, and I just had a blast. It's my favorite division to watch, and it's so funny because every single division you're in, you think this is the top, like this is the best it's ever going to get, and it always gets better, it always gets more exciting. I really, and it, even with like the friendships in the Bible quizzing family, it gets so much better in the experience division too, and I really love that, like looking forward to every single tournament. It's a big motivator for quizzing, and it really was for me too.
Well, and you had a awesome last year. I got to witness 2016. Where were we? We were in Tennessee.
Yeah, we were in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
And you were awarded National Quizzer of the Year 2016, which was 100% earned. You quizzed amazing that year. I got to see a lot of it. And you were truly inspirational for my quizzers. My quizzers just really looked up to you. So what was it like, all that coming to an end? 12 years of quizzing, and then you have your last quiz. Tell us about those last few moments.
Oh my word, it was so emotional, and it was such an emotional year. Like I knew, everybody knows like you're gonna get sad when your last quiz is over, but every single tournament I would just sob. Like in January, I was like, this is my last January tournament, and in February, this is my last show me. Like every single tournament I just sobbed uncontrollably. I feel like I had a really unique like last quiz because it was in round 2 at nationals, and we quizzed to a certain spot in round 1, and then the team that came up to face us out of round 2, that was the only quiz we did. Like we didn't go any further in round 2, and it was Ryland and Taylor Faubert, and they quizzed super well, and I totally bombed. I think I did have 4 wrong at the end of it.
Excuse me, sorry.
You're good. So I interrupted like a 6-part cross-reference or something on question 20, had no clue where it was going, over-interrupted. It was just a really sloppy quiz. And then, of course, like it was over, I contested, I went to talk to my coach, we took a pathetic contest down, it was denied, it was all over, and it was like the most surreal, I don't even know how long it was probably too long because we tend to like linger after games way too long, but we were all like hugging and crying, and my mom was crying, and my sister was there crying, and my pastor was there, and it was so too much to handle. And it was like we hadn't had a last year quizzer from our church in a couple of years, so it was kind of like this realization for the quizzers younger than me, like, oh, this is going to happen to me soon. Mm-hmm. And so I was there with my teammates having a great time, and then they're like, oh, prayer chair is going to start in like 10 minutes. So I ran up to the hotel room, changed really quickly, came into prayer and share like right before it started. And it's all like a haze, like it happened really quickly. I feel like I didn't get to linger in any place, and I didn't even get to realize like, oh, you're done. And that's one regret I kind of have, because it wasn't like registering yet that this was the end. I feel like I would have given a better speech if it had, but it's one of my favorite nights of my life. Like the last two nights of my last nationals, it's indescribable, really.
Well, are you excited for nationals to be 10 minutes down the road this year?
Yes, I am. I'm very excited because I'm excited to go and watch my friends, and I'm excited to go home and sleep in my own bed, which is amazing.
Yes, there's nothing like that for
Truly.
sure. I'm sure you'll be helping in some capacity, some capacity. I'm sure that that you'll have some sort of job. Speaking of jobs, as soon as you finished quizzing, you jumped right back into it. So tell us what you're doing now in Missouri.
So right now I am the experienced quizmaster for the Missouri District, and I coach a beginner team for my church. But it wasn't like that initially. The first year that I was out, I was just like so lost, and I had no clue what I was going to do in quizzing or where I would kind of fit in. And I did not imagine quiz mastering at all to be anything that I would do. It was
So
interesting.
so even while you were quizzing, it was never like a goal, or never kind of you thought you would go that way?
No, I really never thought. I thought I was going to be a coach like everybody else. And I was excited about that prospect, but I also kind of felt like, because there were, I mean, plenty of people involved in quizzing at my church. And if they've got a parent who's going to coach a team, why would they have like someone who's not related to anyone on the team? Because then, that's an extra hotel room on the trips, maybe an extra car to drive there. So I didn't really feel like I was super needed in any place in quizzing, and that was so weird because that's like quizzing was my life, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, you can come and watch. But because I coached one or two tournaments with a beginner team, and then one of my quizzers moved away and the other one quit, so I was just like, I don't really know what to do. Like I don't have anything. And it just so happened that our experienced quizmaster had something that he had to do at one tournament. And so Brother Morgan was like, oh, do you want to fill in and try it? And I was so petrified. Oh my word. So scary. Even though it was a very small district tournament, like all my friends were up there. The teammates that I was quizzing with like 6 months before were up there. And I remember the first quizzer answered the first question, and it was perfect. It was clearly correct. And I just froze. And I looked over at my judges and they were like, it's correct. Like, say correct. I just couldn't fathom that. Okay, yes, that's correct. And I need to say that and then we'll move on. Like it was,
You just forgot the word correct.
I didn't know what to do. I was trying to think like, oh, is it correct? Or is there something else he needs to say? And does this make sense? And like, it was very scary and weird, but I only ended up doing 2 tournaments that year just to fill in. And then there was a need the next year to quizmaster for the whole season. And so I was just like, all right, we're doing it. And it is really fun. I enjoy it a lot. It's super tiring. It's like way more tiring than I ever imagined. Even though like my mom was a quizmaster for a long time, she still is. I just didn't understand what it is to literally run the whole room. You have to keep the session in order all the time. You have to announce everything. Like there's barely any breathing room or break time. Like you quiz, read for the whole quiz, you make your decision. Then when it's over, you got to hand out ribbons. You got to call the next people up. You got to announce lunch break, all this kind of stuff. You got to, set your session up, tear it down. It was like so much more tiring than just quizzing was all day. And everybody knows quizzing all day is really tiring, but it's so rewarding and fulfilling. Like I never could have imagined. And I really enjoy watching the quizzers grow and change, and even like quizzers who were just getting to the experience division a couple of years ago, and how much they've matured and how much they've learned, and even making mistakes and learning things. The first year that I did it, I at the second tournament where I filled in, it was an invitational tournament, and I made a huge mistake, like horrible. I don't remember every detail of it because I've tried to block it out of my mind, but I was like talking to my judges too loudly. We were in a small room, so I just like said the answer. They said whichever verse, and I always check because you want to make sure the paper is not wrong. So I look it up, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it's verse 39 or whatever, and everyone heard me, like the entire place. So one of the coaches said, point of order. We all heard the answer to that, and I had to throw it out, and it was just really bad. And I left that tournament, I'd driven up there by myself. I left like sobbing, like, oh, that was the most horrible experience. I messed it up for the quizzers. It's pathetic. It was terrible.
We've all had those mess ups, especially as a coach. I've had so many incidents that I just feel like I'm never gonna recover.
Honestly,
And
it's still hard for me to see that coach that gave me the point of order all the time. I'm like, oh, but I appreciate that he did that and he just happened.
well, as far as I've seen you Quizmaster, you've done an excellent job. We've enjoyed. We had you at Extrav last year, and we had you this year at the Show Me tournament, and you're doing a great job. So you have nothing to worry about. And do you feel like your quizzing experience, Lynn's, have just made it really easy to transition, just the way you thought as a quizzer, maybe, or?
I mean, it definitely helped, but there are so many things that a quizmaster has to consider that I never considered as a quizzer, and I'm still not sure I'm doing it 100% correctly. I think it's crazy being at the judges table. Well, one thing I definitely learned that my coaches tried to teach me, so by no fault of theirs, I did not do this well as a quizzer. But when quizzers are contesting, I try to, once they say their contest, I repeat it back to them the way I think they should have said it, so they can see like how they could have worded it and how they need to start it out. Because even inexperienced quizzers will come down. So I just feel like they said this and it should be that, but then it was like, okay, bye, and walk away. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. Or my favorite is whenever they come down and they're ready to discuss, they're ready to convince you, and they end up talking themselves out of their argument. Like they decide by the end of it that like either they confuse themselves or they flip and say the total opposite.
I
So
literally did that myself at our last tournament, so I won't speak
it happens.
about it.
It's intimidating for quizzers to come down to the judges table, and I so get that. And I always like, they come down, they say whatever, and I always say, so just so I understand you, your contest is this, this, and that, and that, and that. And then they're like, oh yeah, and then they walk away, and I'm hoping like some wheels are turning, and how you present a contest is so important, I think.
So
and that's one thing.
what advice can you give to current quizzers now for like just some basic rules? Give me like, you need to do this, you need to do this, and do this every time you contest. Like, give me a checklist.
So you need to be confident, but not too confident. I've definitely had run-ins with quizzers who were very arrogant with their viewpoint, and it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, but maybe that's me needing to check my attitude. When you walk up to the table, wait till our books are closed, because sometimes you're telling your judge, okay, they're coming, close your book, or you just don't see them. So wait till their books are closed. That's just like a little thing that'll make them really like you. If you wait because you can tell their book is open and then they close it and then you walk up, that's always good for brownie points. Start off with, my contest is blank. You always start with my contest is, and that's something that my coach taught me. So you don't just jump into something. That gives us time to lean in if you're quiet, or it gives us time to figure out what you're saying. And you want to like say flat out, I think yellow 2 should have been counted incorrect. I feel like the question is invalid. I feel like I should have been counted correct. Like, don't leave that for further down, because we don't really know what you're saying until you start out with that. And then something that, I mean, other quizmasters might not agree with me, but I always like to say, so if you could consider this, or if you could please take a look at that, and not like, I think I'm right because of this, and I know he's wrong because of that. It makes it a little more palatable for the judges and the quizmasters. So definitely start with that.
I do coach my quizzers to always, like you said, give the outcome that you feel should happen if your contest is granted, because that's kind of the point of the contest. Is like, I believe this happened, and so because of that, this needs to be the outcome. And a lot of just judging, mostly, a lot of quizzers don't do that. They just say like, he said yay instead of ye, and they just kind of like leave. And it's like, well, we need to, it's not really a contest unless you give your reasoning and give your outcome. So all you quizzers, That's a really good piece of advice. So, but I will say who I won't say who, but I mean, do you feel like there are some really exceptional contesters out there? Like,
Definitely. I have really great contestants in Missouri, actually, and I spend way too long deliberating all the time. But critical thought, obviously, a lot of quizzers who have really advanced critical thinking skills do really well with forming their arguments. But it doesn't always have to be like earth-shattering doctrinal revelations. You know what I mean? Like, I think don't focus on trying to, reinvent the wheel. Just come up with your contest and your point of view, and it could be something that the quizmaster has never thought of before. It could be something that all three of them missed, because that does happen. Like, the judges can overlook something that the quizmaster overlooked, or there can be confusion. And so your point of view does matter, and it's important to contest and try things out too. I mean, we've all made our contesting mistakes, and it's good to get up there and experience that stress so you can learn how to work through that.
I completely agree. There's some contests that I feel as a coach sound better coming from me, or I have the material in front of me and I can
Mm-hmm.
search through. And then there's some contests that I feel like this needs to be coming from a quizzer because of their knowledge, and the contest is just better suited for a quizzer to bring it down. So
Yeah.
I can't really give any examples of that, but just something to think about for everyone else. All right, so what is something that you wish you knew? 3 things you wish you knew before you started quiz mastering.
Oh man. I think the values, the value of every single piece of the session and every single piece of the tournament and the process and the rules. Like, I desperately need my scorekeeper all the time. My scorekeeper stays on top of me, and I really need my judges and my recorder, and every part of it is so important. And I guess maybe this was just me, but as the quizzer thinking, what the quizmaster says goes, and everybody else is just kind of a formality, but that's not the case at all. And it is, I think the contesting is something else that I learned. Every single part of the session is, it's just so well thought out. And I mean, it's been years of trial and error that quizzing has come to where it is, but it is kind of amazing how all of it works together to hopefully get the best result for the quizzers. And I really enjoy that. I think decision making is just really hard, and I don't think of myself as like a scholar of the word, but I'm always wanting to hopefully understand the verses better and try and make the best judgment calls. And that's something that's just so agonizing for me, because it's so hard, and I never want to make a bad call, even though I've done it before and I'll do it again. But just hoping that I can understand the verses well enough to make good decisions, because so many things, it's so different than what I thought it was as a quizzer. Like the things that I thought they were deliberating, or even just at the BQE, whenever I got to judge for Brother Faubert last year, I would be thinking one thing and he would come down to the table. I thought, okay, he's going to say this. Absolutely not. Like, I was so far in left field. And there's just so much still to learn. And it's really fascinating, but also very exciting.
I agree. I agree. All right, so moving on from quiz mastering, I know a lot of people are really interested in something you're heavily involved in, and that is the Urshan Bible Quizzing class. So, first of all, how did you get involved with this? Tell us how it all got started. Tell us what it's like. I know I have one of my quizzers is in it currently, and he's really enjoying it. So just give us some information about it. Pitch it. Give us a pitch.
Yes. So it got started because Sister Kristen Hoover, who is the quiz mom and a coach from Missouri, from Lebanon, Missouri, she had been wanting some kind of material to supplement her kids' study, and she's a homeschool mom. So she had always been kind of hoping for some kind of academic material to enhance her kids' study of the quizzing material every year. And she'd been talking with other moms about this, like, would this be something you would be interested in? And how do we make this happen? Because, like, we know coaches and parents all try to do, like, the devotion and things like that along with the verses. But she was always wanting something a little bit more for her quizzers and her kids. So she was brainstorming with other moms and talking with some people at Urshan about a dual credit class. So while quizzers are still quizzers and quizzing age, like in high school, and then some quizzers who are in their first year of college, they could take whatever this course would be, or this, you know, imaginary course at the time, and get high school credit and college credit for it. So she worked really hard, actually. We owe a lot to Sister Hoover. She worked really hard to get with Brother Norris, Dr. David Norris at Urshan College, and get him involved in this. And he was a quizzer and a coach, and so he knows the world of quizzing very well. And I know Sister Hoover, and my mom actually used to work for Brother Norris at Urshan. And so he also goes to my church, and he knew that I was involved in quizzing. And so he just kind of asked me, he's like, hey, there's this project. It's about quizzing. We don't really know what it is yet. It's going to be a class. It's going to be for quizzers. It's going to be doctrine. Would you help me get this off the ground? And so we just kind of started on it last year, figuring out what could work for quizzers, what are the needs, who are we trying to get this to. So it's a one-time course. It's only this year. So you have a very, very fast approaching deadline. So May the 1st, if you want to apply through the Urshan course, which there are only certain states that Urshan can serve with this online course. So if you want to apply through the Urshan course, you can email me at megan.favorite@urshancollege.org, and we can get you involved in that. But if you're not in one of the states that Urshan can serve, or maybe you're not a high school student, or you're not a quizzer who's in college, you can still have access to the course. We have basically the exact same course on a different platform. So even if you can't get in by May 1st, you can still take the course. And you can also take it if you don't want the college credit. If you are a coach wanting to deepen your knowledge of the words so you can help your quizzers, or if you've got maybe a quizzer who's in middle school who's really bright and wants to take the course but isn't old enough, we have a few different versions of it available, because Brother Norris worked really hard to get 19 video lectures along with 19 quizzes and 2 exams and 2 papers all put together, and it's mirroring a course at Urshan called Introduction to Pentecostal Theology, and it really just goes beautifully with our verses of study. And he adapted the course a little bit to go in the order of our verses of doctrine this year. So he worked really hard on it, and he wants everyone who could benefit from it to have access to it. So there are a few different versions that you can have access to. There's the Urshan course, which I talked about. There's the identical course for credit, and then there are 2 options for no credit. You can have access to just the 19 video lectures. They're anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour long. They include lectures from Brother Norris, different skits from his video series, Big Ideas, and preaching and teaching specific for the course from Brother Jones, Brother Bernard, Brother Gleaston, Sister Laura Payne. It's really something I'm really proud of, that it's very different to any other resource that we could get through Bible quizzing at this point. So if you're interested in that, you can have access to just the video lectures, and that is just $100. And again, you can email me at megan.favorite@urshancollege.org, and I can get you access to that. Or there's another version that's all the video lectures and all the reading materials that go with it, from various books from Brother Norris and Brother Bernard and other authors, tailored for each lesson. That is $150. And then the Urshan course, while scholarships are available, is $300. And the identical course, while scholarships are available, is also $300. There are plenty of scholarships left, plenty of room actually in each course. And you have until the season's over. So I think it's August 10th or August 15th. So it's not like the semester is ending, you got to get this done. You have the entire summer. It's asynchronous. You can work at your own pace. And it's really just a phenomenal resource, and in a way a limited resource, because it's not going to happen again in the near future that we can see right now.
I wasn't aware of that. I thought this was going to become a yearly thing. So do you think there's any chance that it may down the line become more of a normal class?
I'm not sure, because the The magic of this year is that Urshan has a course that is exactly what we need for the material this year, and that's not always the case. And even if there's a Romans course, there is a Hebrews course, it's not always conducive to have dual credit students. So the Introduction to Pentecostal Theology course is a freshman level course. So if and when you get to Urshan, you take that right away. And this was a great opportunity for Urshan because the quizzers who take it will be more likely to transfer into Urshan, and then that credit's taken care of, and they don't have to take that class. So it's a little more difficult when we get to other years, and also it's been a very difficult process because Urshan does have candidacy for accreditation, and there were a lot of steps to go through to get this kind of off the ground. So I'd say if you have maybe any inkling that you would want to do this, or you might find the video lectures interesting, even a junior coach, quiz parent, anyone really, it's for the purpose of Bible quizzing, but anyone in the Bible quizzing family or beyond can have access to this. And I really encourage you to seize this opportunity if you can.
I've heard nothing but great things, so I'm really excited about the whole course. It's awesome that it got on the ground. Shout out to Sister Hoover.
Yes.
Helping make it happen. We love her and her 5 awesome kids.
They're great.
they really are. All right, moving on to all right, we got we're gonna kind of move on to something a little more light. I asked the same question with Eric. I'll probably ask it to every former quizzer that comes on. But what if it's one, please give me one. But what's your favorite Bible verse?
Oh man, I love 2 Timothy 1:8. I think we learned it in 2011. But be not thou therefore ashamed of the testimony of our Lord, nor of me as prisoner, but be thou partakers of the afflictions of the gospel according to the power of God. Love that verse. I was like 14 when I was learning it. And it's interesting, and I think other Pentecostal girls can relate to this, but the unashamed attitude, the unashamed confidence in the truth, in who you are as an apostolic girl, because it's different for boys than girls, I think, in the UPCI, looking different and saying, this is who I am content in this. That verse really spoke to me as a young girl, saying, it doesn't matter, what anyone else thinks of me. I'm not going to be ashamed of the testimony of the Lord. I'm not going to be ashamed of the gospel and of the way I look and of the way I am, because I know I'm where God wants me to be. And that verse really spoke to me when I was younger, and still does.
That's awesome. You nailed it. You quoted it perfectly. So it must have stayed with you. And then your favorite study material year?
Oh man, I really, really liked 2011. First and Second Thessalonians, First and Second Timothy was great and so much fun. And I think Romans probably tops it, and it does have, that emotional bias because it was my last year. But Romans is so interesting because it's so difficult. Oh my word, it was so difficult to learn.
I'll never forget Romans chapter 7 with my quizzers learning Romans 7 and trying to drill it. Oh my Lord.
Romans chapter 7 and Romans chapter 16, very difficult. But I really, really enjoyed those 2 chapters, and that year, there's nothing like your last year of quizzing, and I could talk about this all the time, but like, if you have the opportunity to quiz up until your last year, I know a lot of quizzers have so much going on, and I was right there with them, like in college, like working 2 jobs, being involved in church still, and trying to quiz at a certain level. It's very difficult, but it's like the absolutely most rewarding experience of my whole life. And I would kill to go back in time and just relive that over and over and over again. Every mistake, every question I got wrong, every experience that maybe wasn't the best. It was just such an amazing year. And so that's why Romans holds a very special place in my heart. And also Paul is just amazing. And getting inside the mind of Paul is treacherous, but very fun.
We have a thing with our team where even this year we're learning a lot of Romans and a lot of scriptures that Paul wrote, and every once in a while there's a verse that all I'm going to say is it could have been written differently. And every time we come across one of those or we're learning it, we just throw up a thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
But we really did enjoy Romans as well. And every year's been great. This year's the first year we've done doctrine since I've been coaching, and it's so different, but it's so important. And
Mm-hmm.
the referencing is so different. I know it's tough for a lot of quizzers, but it's such a good thing to do. I'm so glad we do this is it 7 years we do this?
Yeah, it was 2012 the last time, so it's every 7 years.
That's right. So yeah, doctrine may be my favorite year. I don't know. It probably is my favorite study material so far, but all right. So here we go. After, let me see, the next question. Oh, okay. Speaking of nationals and studying and self-discipline, give me a day in the life of Megan Favorite summer before nationals. Now, I know we've talked a lot about this before, and I just found it so fascinating, your study habits and the way you push yourself and set aside time. So I really want to hear more about that.
Yeah, so it's very difficult, and my methods are a little bit insane. I attribute them to my mother. I attribute everything to my mother because she's wonderful. Everything good and bad I attribute to her. She, when we were younger, she was very strict with time management, and she said, you can do anything for 15 minutes. You don't want to load the dishes. Well, only do it for 15 minutes. I'm not going to make you do it longer than 15 minutes. And of course, you get all the dishes done in 15 minutes, or clean your room only for 15 minutes. You can do anything for 15 minutes. So one of my coaches, I had a few different coaches. I guess I'll name them just to be nice. Not to be nice. I need to. I need to give them the honor that's due to them. Brother Arthur Vanderhoff was my coach for 2 years. Brother Brock Fergie was my coach for 2 years. Sister Nan Marlette was my coach for a lot of years. Sister Kathy Brickle was my coach for a lot of years, and my mom. But when Brother Vanderhoff first became my coach, he said, Megan, you need to study for 4 hours a day. And I was like, yeah, right. Who on earth could study for 4 hours a day? Like, that's impossible.
Is that all year round? Did he expect that?
I think he might have. I'm not sure. That's definitely not what I did. During the school year, I'm lucky to get an hour and a half. An hour, like I would say an hour is the bare minimum, and that might seem crazy. But if you do 30 minutes after you wake up, 30 minutes before you go to sleep, you can have a good grip on the material, and that's all you need. Truly, I really believe that. And a lot of people say you can't do an hour a day, but I think you can. And trying to like amp it up a little bit before BQE, I would try to do like maybe 2 hours a day before BQE, but that's just adding an extra charting. But when you're on the go all day, like I used to get up super early in the morning, like at an ungodly hour to get to work that was like 45 minutes away from me, and to get there at 6 a.m. So I'd wake up at like 4:30 or 4:45 a.m. and like maybe you have 15 minutes in the car, maybe you get there a little early, maybe you're waiting in a drive-through. Like document that 15 minutes that you have, study what you need to study the most, and take advantage of every single pocket of time that you have, because you're not going to sit down for 4 solid hours in the quiz. Like that's not going to happen, and if it does, your rear end's going to hurt and your brain's going to be fried. So I never did more than an hour at a time. It just wasn't possible. I always had to have a break. So in the summer, I set the goal to do 4 hours a day, just because I was like, this was summers before I had a job. And I was like, I just want to try this. I think it'll happen. 4 hours can go by so fast. Trust me, if you're studying the right things, because a lot of people don't know how to study. And that's the biggest thing that I thank my mom for. She taught me how to study and what to study. If you can vary your studying, like quote for 15 minutes, 15 minutes on one-time words, read a quiz to yourself for 15 minutes, reference for 15 minutes, read 15 minutes of a commentary that's talking about a couple verses, quote again for 15 minutes, or after you do 4, then you take like a 5-minute break, go to the bathroom, get a snack, come back in, zone back in. I always kept track, because when you're doing 15 minutes, if you can do 16 sets of 15 minutes, then you've got 4 hours. And it truly goes by fast. If you've got a variety of things that you want to study, and this is of course after you know all the verses, you can really be really effective with with your time if you break it up and do 15 minutes at a time. Because even as a student, I could not just sit and study for an hour. I would do 15 minutes and literally make a stack of my books and put that book on the top and then slide that book out from the bottom and do 15 minutes of that subject and go back and forth. So for me, I know this probably isn't the case for everyone, but 15 minutes at a time, I swear by it, the 15-minute rule works. It will really help you because it's hard to get off your phone. Everybody knows that. So I would text my family, anyone it was important that needed to reach me studying, or I'm going to be off my phone for however long. So you turn your phone down, no sound coming out of it except for your timer. With an iPhone, you just turn the little button on the side and the timer will still go off. Set my phone for 15 minutes to go off at the end, and I put it across the room where I could not get to it. If you set it right next to you, you're going to, pick it up and want to be on Instagram or something. So you put it across the room and try as hard as you can. And I know it's difficult. It became easier as I trained myself to do it more, but focus on one thing for 15 minutes. And when the timer goes off, you get to get up and stretch. You kind of reset your mind, and then you do it again with something else, something new, something fresh. And I had to walk around the room sometimes because it was hard for me to sit still. So walk around your living room, do your one-time words or speed quote to yourself. That helped me get into the mindset that I needed to be in to focus, because I'm not like the most disciplined individual. I'm kind of like, I can be scatterbrained and all over the place. So it's important to train yourself. And I believe like you can condition yourself to sit in the same place and be in the right frame of mind, familiar surroundings, or maybe you have some white noise that helps you study in the same place at the same time and get those routines, and that will help you.
And you were really good with rewarding yourself, weren't you?
Right. So I'm kind of weird in that I would make like these tick marks. I like to keep a schedule. Well, I started to keep a schedule of what I would do because people didn't believe me. Like I told my mom I was studying for 4 hours. She was like, okay, yeah, sweetie, good for you. And I was like, no, I'm studying for 4 hours. So I kept little tick marks of what I did at each time, and then I would add it up. And so like if I made my goal for the day, like some days it was obvious I wasn't going to be able to do 4 hours, and so, or 2 hours or whatever my goal was. So I would, mark those days, say I was babysitting and I knew I was going to take the kids to the zoo. You're probably not going to get 4 hours in that day. But if I got to my goal for that day, I would reward myself with like, okay, you can watch Netflix for 30 minutes, or even just if you're trying to get through pages of chart work, put a candy bar after 4 pages and go through those as fast as you can. You get to the candy bar.
That's awesome.
Honestly, like rewards, you have to reward yourself. And again, that's part of conditioning. You can train yourself, and it's hard to do. And it took me all my years of quizzing to train myself to learn how to study, because it's not fun. And a lot of quizzers think like, oh, the quizzers who study for 4 hours a day, they just love it. And they just have this gift, and it's like, no, it's very difficult sometimes too. But it's interesting because it changed a lot for me in my final summer quizzing. I tried to amp it up and do more than I had ever done before, and I was really excited to push myself further. But it was like the most different study time that I had ever experienced, and I did end up sitting for more than an hour at a time then. But I would always start off studying with prayer. I'm sure your coaches have told you this, like you always pray. This is something that I always prayed because I always had this knowledge that there's no way I could do anything in quizzing, anything in life without God helping me. And I knew that right from the bat because of my testimony. And I know that Eric said that I had a medical condition. It wasn't totally true, and I wanted to like clarify. But I mean, he just heard something, and I appreciate his shout out to Eric. He did great. But when my mom was pregnant with me, she was told that my brain was not developing and it was not the right size. So basically, your baby's healthy, there's nothing we can really do. Her brain is not growing, it's not developing. She's going to have learning disabilities. She'll be behind in school. It will be clear that there's something off. She won't be able to learn. She won't be able to maybe even graduate. It's just, this is the way it's going to be. So, of course, she did not take that answer. And my grandpa, who's a pastor, prayed. they all prayed over me. I don't want to cry. And I didn't even hear about this until I was much older, but never had a problem, not once. I mean, I know that it's the power of God that miracle happened in my life because, I mean, I'm a college student. I have never been behind in school. I have never had trouble because God has been helping me. And I realized even when I was only like 13, 14, that like, there's no way. Like, there's no way. And think about the amazing things that these quizzers do. I mean, quizzers like Vincent Beardsley, who memorize so much chart work, and these little bitty quizzers who can memorize all these verses. This is not by our might. Like, this is not by our ability. And it's incredible. And that's what I try and tell people who say that quizzing is too hard. Like, quizzing is not for the super geniuses. I am an example of that. I am not a super genius, but the Lord has empowered me. And through help from my mom, help from my teammates, his help, his anointing, I was able to do the things that I was able to do in quizzing, and anyone can do that. I truly, truly believe that. And I think that's a message that we need to push more often, because a lot of times as quizzers, it is amazing what we can do, and we like to show off, and we like to be proud of what we've done, but we need to help other people realize that they can do this too, and it's not our doing. And sorry, soapbox.
No, that was awesome. You can talk about that stuff as much as you want. That's an amazing testimony. I don't know if I'd ever heard that before. So that is really impactful. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, you're an inspiration. 4 hours a day in the summer, and you're focused and disciplined. That is, I'm excited to bring that to anyone that would listen, because that's inspirational. It really is. And woof, that was awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of this. We're gonna you ready to keep on going?
Yeah.
All right. So you got to be a foul judge at nationals last year. So obviously it's a really interesting job. It's really different than because you don't typically have foul judges at most tournaments. Even Extrav, we typically don't. Typically, nationals is foul judge time. So tell us some good stories. Tell us some fun moments. Tell us what that was like.
I really, really enjoyed foul judging, and I kind of like always looked up to the foul judges because they're so stately and they're so serious, and they sit there like really focused. And I was always, you're always afraid of the foul judges. Maybe I'm just a fearful person, I don't know. But being like either on red 1 or yellow 3, they're like right there, you feel like they're breathing down your neck. But it is a very long day for a foul judge. It's exciting though, and I think for the quiz nerds who just enjoy quizzing, it can be really fun. I really liked watching the quizzing, especially when it was super intense. I kind of got that buzz like when I was a quizzer, and I'm right there with them, and I feel like I'm in the game, so that was really fun. But you have to be vigilant, and it's very hard to be vigilant during one game. I think it was in general session near the end of the whole tournament, and it was like question 13 or 14, and Brother Faubert accidentally said, and question 20, and I was like, I just zoned out for like 7 questions. Oh, what have I done? What have I missed? Like, I panicked. And then he was like, oh no, question 14. And I was like, oh, I gotta pay closer attention. Like, it scared me so bad because it can be easy to zone out when you're up there, but it is a really fun job. And the new rule for the foul judges is, we gotta watch out for the Apple Watches, because it can pop up with the text or whatever. So in the middle of a game, I realized a girl had an Apple Watch on, but her sleeve was kind of covering it, so she wasn't looking at it, nothing was shining. But I just stood up, like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop Brother Lytle, and so I just stood straight up and I was like, you, take off your watch. And the quizzer next to her just had a normal watch on, but like I freaked him out, and he was just like, okay, and took his normal watch off. And I was like, no, not you, you're fine, we need the Apple Watch.
Oh, that's awesome. One of our intermediate quizzers, his name is Wesley. We love Wesley. His nickname's T-Bone. If anybody sees him, you can call him T-Bone. He loves it. He doesn't even have a smartphone or anything. He has a flip phone, and he has this little digital watch with like red letters on it. And he at BQE they started he saw them like whispering and talking, and they kept like pointing at him and like to his watch, and he was just really confused because it's not a smartwatch, it's not an Apple Watch. And it's a really fun story, but we ended up getting it all figured out that he didn't have an Apple Watch. But it's like the kid doesn't even have a smartphone, it's not a smartwatch.
He's got his little digital watch.
It was great. But so as a foul judge, did you feel like really included in the quiz team or the officials team? Like, did you feel really included in that?
I did, but I did not expect to, because the foul judge is like the entry level guy, and he or she just kind of sits there and they kind of don't have the most to say and do, and we don't really get to call a lot of fouls. I didn't really call a lot of fouls, but it was a really fun experience, because just like praying with the officials before the tournament started, something that I didn't realize that they did, like spending a lot of time in prayer and feeling very much a part of the team, and feeling like everything is important for the benefit of the quizzers, and feeling a responsibility too, because at first I thought, it's not that big of a deal. I'm very excited to get to do it, but every single person every single person in the Bible quizzing family, but every single person, especially in the officials team, has a responsibility to the quizzers, and we need to do our jobs well so that everything goes well for them, and hopefully we can benefit them as much as possible. And I didn't really think of the foul judge in that way before. I didn't think it was the most important role, but it really opened my eyes to something I was saying earlier too. Like, every single part of it is very important, and I was super lucky to get to be a part of that national. Every NABQT is really special, but it was a very different experience, and I really liked it.
That's awesome. Well, maybe you will be in some capacity again this year. Hint, whoever, Brother Faubert, if you're watching. Well, it would be really cool if I wasn't coaching. I would love to be some part of that, but I don't think I could ever give up coaching. I love it way too much. So,
well, you're a great coach, so
well, I appreciate it. Thank you. You're a great quiz master. So, okay, we got a question on Instagram from Jalen. So I wanted to throw it at you and we can discuss it if you'd like. Is it possible to catch up on your verses when you're behind? So I think, a little context is needed, like how far behind. Yeah.
Right.
That is part of the question. But the answer is yes. The answer is
absolutely.
Did you ever get behind, or that would surprise me if you ever really you did?
Oh, so a lot of quizzers start very early learning their verses. I rarely started before December, honestly.
Really?
Even if I did start before December, I would lose track at some point around Thanksgiving. Yeah, I had a hard time because I always loaded up the fall semester with a lot of classes to have a lighter load in the spring semester. So like I was just really working hard on school up until like the first week of December. But getting behind, yeah, it happens to everybody. And knowing your verses is the most important thing. So when you get behind, this is something that I harp on with my beginner quizzers all the time. Like, know what you know. Don't tell me you know 100 verses, but the last 30 you can barely quote. So if you're getting behind, there's a method. It's 5 at a time. You learn one, say it with the reference a billion times, say it till you know it, say it till you can say it 5 times perfectly in a row. Learn the next one. After you get that one memorized, review them both. Get the third one memorized, review all 3. 4th, 5th. Once you get to 5, you quote that stack twice. You reference that stack twice. Some people have different terms for quoting and referencing. Like some people will say referencing is, looking at the reference and quoting the verse. But I say quoting, you quote the verse by looking at the reference, and then referencing, you look at the verse and say the reference. So once you get those 5 done, quote them a million times. Quote them 10 more times than you think you need to quote them. And you can quote them fast. I mean, that's how you get through this quickly. So if you can quote them all really fast, mix them up, put them in order, mix them up again, reference them, then you can move on to the next 5 the same way. you can learn 10, 20, 30 verses in, a couple hours as long as you keep reviewing. And then maybe you get 20 verses done by the end of that day, review them 5 more times before you go to sleep. Wake up in the morning, review them again. If you can really push hard on review in the first couple days after memorizing a lot in a row, then you'll be good. The worst thing that quizzers do is say, even just learning 1 or 2, oh, I know this verse, set it down and look at it till the next day. That's never going to work. You have to review them a million times, and review is more important than anything. So if you get behind, you can get ahead. You just got to review, and set aside that time. If you're prepping for the BQE and you're trying to memorize charting, but you've got like 40 verses left to learn, let the charting sit for a second. Get your verses done first. But you can do it, Jalen. You will get ahead, and your coach will be proud.
I believe it too. Thank you for the question, Jalen. I've got a few quizzers that are trying to make coverage right now, so please listen, guys. You can do it. All right, you talked a little bit about being a beginner coach. So I can't imagine what it's like coaching, especially you've got 3 little guys that just seem full of charisma and just seem awesome. So give us some of your favorite moments so far of being a beginner coach.
Coaching beginners is so difficult. Coaching in general is so much more difficult than I thought it was. I started coaching beginners straight out of the gate, and I've been coaching beginners for 3 years now, but this is the first team that I've had that their parents really work super hard with them, and they know all their verses. They are like so unpredictable. So they've known all their verses every tournament. The first tournament we didn't get to go to. Second tournament, they went undefeated, and like it was ridiculous. I was quiz mastering at that tournament, so I didn't get to coach them, but they were like amazing. So in the next tournament, I was their coach, and we flopped, and we went 0-2, and I was like, I have no clue what this is. Then the next tournament, we got first again. Then the next tournament, we just went to a round robin, and we flopped. We lost 3 games out of 4. So they're like back and forth, and I never know what they're going to do. I never know what they're going to say. Honestly, I applaud their parents, and quiz parents in general. I applaud you. A little shout out for the quiz parents, like, force your children to learn their verses. Yes, it is going to be a fight, but it's going to be worth it one day, so do not give up. I'm so thankful that the parents of my quizzers work really, really hard for them, but my quizzers are, the first practice I had with them, one of them had 1 year of experience, the other 2 are brand new. So I was like writing things on the board. I like drew out what a tournament would look like and where the quiz masters and what all this stuff means. And they have no clue. Like, they don't know what questions are at this point. They hear something, they hit, and they quote whatever they just heard. They don't know what question words are. They don't know any of that kind of stuff. And so I've loved watching them learn. And like one of my quizzers he like understood what a 2-part question was. And I watched him have that epiphany. He's like, I get it now. And then I asked him a bunch, like just simple ones on like Psalms 19:7 and 19:8. And he was like nailing them. And I loved watching him like click with what that was. And one of my other quizzers just did his very first ever contest. And I had to push him. I was like, you're contesting this game. It doesn't matter if you have a contest. I told him, like, you can only contest if you get it wrong or if they get it right. So one of those cases, you better contest. And I like threatened them. I was like, everyone is contesting this. I don't care this tournament. If we don't have any contests, everybody's doing it. And my one quizzer did his first contest, and he was like so elated. He had been drilling like, okay, so I stand up and I talk to the captain and I come back to you and all this. Like, he was so happy and excited and so proud. And then he gets back up to the board, and they said, this contest is denied, and we're going to have a foul on the coach of the red team, which was me, because I didn't even stand up. I sat down, and my quizzer ran up to me, and I was so excited. I was like, I sat in my chair, eye level with him, sent him down. So it was precious, but it is so much fun to coach beginners. Way more fun than I thought it was going to be.
They can't expect you to stand up when he's like this tall. You just have to sit down.
I just sat in my chair like an idiot.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. They quizzed really well. We had BQE at our church, and they won BQE this year. They seem like a fantastic team. Do you think, this is curious because I know different churches are different ways, but do you think that you could potentially just coach them as long as you can, like move up with them? Or do you think it's kind of like once you're just like in beginners and you're just
I
going to
don't
stay in
know.
beginners?
I've thought about that a little bit. Well, one of them is moving up to juniors. But it's kind of lightning in a bottle, and I keep telling them that because I want them to push themselves as much as they can. Because it's a very unique team, and they're really balanced, and they all contribute. They all know all their verses, and so that's how we were able to do so well at the BQE. Is everybody was hitting, and like nobody got on the all tournament team or anything. So some of them could move away in a couple of years. They're not all the same age, so it's not. I don't think I would move up with them. I think I really do like the beginner division, even though it can be a mess sometimes. Like last year, one of my quizzers just jumped up in the middle of the game and ran back and jumped on top of me and gave me a hug. He's 5 years old. I was like, well, we can't do this. Go back to the board. So I think I would probably stay with beginners, also just because it works out where I can coach beginner at one tournament, Quizmaster experience the next. So at a certain point, I would have to stop. But I don't think I would be able to move up with them, even though that would be really cool.
Gotcha. Well, if you had to pick one, I know this is a tough question. Coaching, quiz mastering. If like next year, just for 1 year, not forever. For 1 year, you had to pick one. Which one would you pick?
I thought you were going to say, if you have to pick one, who's your favorite quizzer on your team? I was wondering, what is he doing? I
Wouldn't
don't
ask you that.
know. It's so hard because I really enjoyed both. If I only had to do one, probably coaching.
I figured you couldn't say no to their faces.
They are so precious. They do this, which Hannah Brickle, my former teammate, coaches with me, and she taught them this. Which I wasn't there whenever it was conceived, but now they go like buzzer fingers and they like squeeze their fingers and do this face like before every game. And we flopped really bad, like I said at the last tournament. And my quizzer comes down, and he goes, "We didn't do buzzer fingers. That's why we lost." And he was like convinced that was why. They are precious.
Oh goodness, that's awesome. I would love to coach a little team of 3 little guys. That would be that would be so much fun. Oh man, my daughter's getting into beginners and learning, and she's scared to death right now. She knows her verses, and she just wants to sit up there, and that's it. She just wants to sit up there. So we're gonna work on it. I have a feeling once her little sister gets more involved, that's when she's gonna realize that she's not gonna let her little sister outdo her, and she'll start putting in some effort in overcoming the fear. But
Yeah.
beginner division is so cool. It's amazing what the little kids can do, what they're capable of with consistency and structure. If you give them structure, give them consistency, they can accomplish just so much more than you would ever think. So, all right. Speaking of coaching, what is the best piece of advice or coaching that your coach ever gave you? I know you had a lot of different coaches, so
I did. I had like 5 or 6 different coaches, but they were all like perfect at the right time. And my mom she's so funny. She's a very, very strict mom. And those who know my mom as a quiz master, as a coach, or as a parent know, like, she did not play any games. And so finally, once at a tournament, she was just like, you know how to do it, just do it. Like, stop playing around and quiz. You know how to quiz. And that's something she told me as I got older and like struggled with self-discipline. She said, I taught you how to do it, now do it. And her line was, I gave you the tools, build the house. I'm not going to build your house for you. I'm not going to stand here and build the house while you stand there and watch me. She said, I gave you the tools, now build the house. And that's something all the time that I say when I'm stressed out, like, okay, I've got the tools, I just got to build the house now. And that's one of my favorite things that my mom taught me. She's like, don't mess around, don't stress about what if. You have the tools, build the house. And that's one of my favorites. But I do have one more. Sister Marlette used to tell me, Megan, you're in the driver's seat now. Like, if I was getting freaked out in a game, she'd say, you're in the driver's seat. You decide if you want to push on the gas or if you want to press on the brake. Like, that helped me a lot in my like intermediate mindset of saying, okay, I'm in the driver's seat. I can get the next one. It's okay.
Oh man, I'm definitely still in the build a house one. Oh, I'm gonna tell your mom I'm gonna steal that one because that's perfect.
She's
That's
amazing.
that's a perfect way of saying Actually, shout out to Dylan for recommending that question. He thinks that should be a staple. So, you guys agree?
Oh yeah.
All right. This is going to be a fun one. And I think we discussed this earlier, and I think this is going to be a good story. But the most memorable question you pulled out of a hat, where you just God gave you grace, and you pulled it off.
I remember specifically because it was so crazy. I knew there was no way that I could do it. It was it was a horrible quiz, one of my worst quizzes ever. So we're at nationals in 2014, and we're studying John, and this is the end of round 2. So the team that wins is going to go on to face Zanesville, Ohio. So Tanner Carroll, one of the best quizzers of all time, one of my favorite quizzers. He's like the greatest. So it was me and Nathan Marlette and Megan Littles, Hannah Marlette and Ashley Crispin were the subs, and my coaches were Brother Vanderhoff and Brother Fergie. And it was a rough game, like one of those games where everything is horrible. Like the other team was doing well and they were getting things right, but so many times I would get one wrong. The other quizzers would get the reviews wrong. It was one of those games that was just so long and tumultuous. And question 17, I interrupted, and I gave out like a bunch of pronoun identifications. I messed it all up. They spent like 30 minutes trying to figure out what I even said on that question, and got it wrong. That was my 4th wrong. So my coach calls a timeout. Okay, so we need all 3 30s. So I had to step up with 4 wrong and try and get all 3 30s. 3 of my teammates were aging out that year. So I was like, this is their last game. And I could blow it for them. And I had been doing horrible the whole quiz. Somehow I got 18 and 19. And then we did another timeout. And I was like, those were lucky. There's no way I can get this last one. We were freaking out. We were praying. I started crying. I was like, guys, this is your last game. I'm so sorry. And they're like, hold on, breathe. So question number 20 was a 4-part cross-reference that I hit way too early. Like, I think I hit maybe after 1 question. And all of a sudden, I was reminded of this cross-reference that I made up and wrote down, because that was something that I spent time doing over the summer, was making up cross-references and writing them down. And I was like, all right, I'm going with it. So I just, fast as I could, said it all, didn't really do much thinking, not a lot of analyzing, just blurted it out. And then they were like, that's correct. Like, no debate, no contemplation or anything. So the other team contests. I start like sobbing, freaking out, come down from the board. Everyone's like, that was insane. And I came up to my mom and was like, Mom, I wrote that question. She was like, yeah, you got it, sweetie. Good job. I was like, no, I wrote it. And I showed her in the book. I was like, I made this up. I cannot believe that question was asked. It was like one of my favorite games ever, one of my worst games ever, but it was so crazy and just uncanny. One of those God moments at the board for sure.
Do you think that writing questions is crucial?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Being in questions as much as possible, because I don't know for how long I would only do questions at practice, and it's absurd. You have to do questions at home, even if you don't have someone to read them to you. Like, read them to yourself, make them up, come up with cross-references. Eric did a really good job of going over all of this, but writing questions is so, so important. Write them down. I told my quizzers the other day, since they know what 2-part questions are now, I was like, everybody go make up a 2-part question. You're going to come back and you're going to read it to the team, and we're going to act like you're the quiz master. So do that for your teammates, no matter what division you're in. Like, write some questions, ask your teammates what they think of this and that. And I think that'll really help a lot of quizzers. Just get on the buzzer more, get on questions more. Definitely review first, but do that next.
I agree, especially cross references, because if you study chart work and you see the crosses and you can make a good question out of it, that's what question writers do. So if you just do it, in the first time you hear that key word or this verse, and in this phrase, then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah, it's important because even if you don't write the exact question like I did that time, and that was just pure luck, but even if you don't get exactly, it's going to be some variation on what you already know. And so it will be easy for you to adapt and change that.
Right. So you mentioned Tanner and how big of a deal he was to you. So who are some of the, obviously he's one of them, but who are some of the other quizzers that you really looked up to and then inspired you to become better when you were growing up?
Tanner was like the goat. He's one of my goats, which that's such a weird phrase because it sounds like I have a bunch of goats. He's one of my goats.
So for anyone that doesn't know what goat means,
There we go.
I know because like my dad watches this, he's gonna think, goat. Why is she calling Tanner a goat? Goat means greatest of all times, an acronym. So Tanner is one of your greatest.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest, in my opinion, which, I mean, that varies by generation too. He just, in every single division, he was so amazing. And I remember watching him when he was in intermediate and I was in juniors and he won nationals. And I was like, how do you even do that? Like, he was like a mind reader. He was incredible. And I loved watching him quiz. And I only ever quizzed him like 4 times in my entire quiz career, but they were like some of my favorite games and never even came close to being as good as Tanner, but he is one of the greatest. Andrew Huffman is one of the greatest. I never quizzed against him in an official game, but he was like so good. He achieved the trifecta, which quizzers can rarely get, like undefeated, first place, high score, quizzer of the year. And his last year, it was like the peak, and we all worshipped him, and some still do. He is one of the greatest. I'm trying to think of other ones. Andrew Callahan, I really looked up to him, and I actually did get to quiz against him his last year, which was crazy because I remember watching him for such a long time. The whole entire like class of 2010, I remember watching their prayer and share, and it had such like amazing quizzers that year, and watching them do their speeches and watching them quiz. I wanted to be exactly like them, every single one of them.
And I will say that you did a great job. So I'm sure that you lived up to every bit of that. So we don't have much left. We've gone through a lot of stuff tonight. The last question I have, and we can talk about another story in a little bit, but is there a Bible quizzing message? We talked about this with Eric as well. A message at a tournament or something of that sort that stuck with you or inspired you?
Yeah, I remember my last BQE, Brother Faubert preached, and I can't remember the title of the message that he preached, but one line really stuck out to me. And he said something along the lines of, whether you win a game or lose a game, whether you air out or you quiz out, or no matter how the game goes, whether it's like a super smooth, quick game or one of those that lasts forever and everyone's doing horribly, you have to make the other team feel like champions. And that was kind of incredible to me. But then I realized certain teams that I had lost against, or I'd done really horrible in a game against, or even that I had beaten, there are certain teams that really do make you feel like a champion leaving the board with their attitudes, with their demeanor, or even with just if they destroy you and then they, after the game is locked, they stop and they let you kind of regain your dignity at the end of the game. Things like that are so important. And that that really amazed me. And then you can even see it in how teams celebrate for other teams or react to other teams doing well or doing poorly. You can watch how in the audience or even just in interacting socially, how people treat each other in quizzing. And it's a very interesting concept. And I knew like my very last game, even though I was horrible quizzing against Taylor and Ryland, and Sister Faubert hugged me right after, like certain people just make you feel so good even if you've done so badly. And I think that speaks to their character and their attitudes, and I really appreciated that. And that's something that I wanted to convey after I heard that message.
All right, Megan, we've been going about an hour and a half, I think. You've had such awesome things to say. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Oh, I did have like a little list of things, and I told this to some of my quizzers, not a big list. Here it is. So I got to talk to quizzers at our Missouri and Illinois kickoff, and this was like right after I was done with quizzing. Like I was finished quizzing in August, and then we had the kickoff in like October or something, and I really felt like I needed to tell the quizzers a couple things that I hadn't really heard people telling me, or maybe not saying out loud, and a couple things that I tell my beginner quizzers now, but things that I've told quizzers, any quizzer I see, which I've even told this to some of your quizzers when they would come up and talk to me, is 4 things that you should always do with your studying. And the first one is you have to pray before you study. I would always pray and thank God that I could even be involved in Bible quizzing, that I knew about it, that I had the capacity to learn these verses because of his gift, because of his miracle. And I always tell people, pray for your teammates, pray for your mind, pray for the time that you're about to study, pray that you cannot be distracted, pray that you can discipline yourself and make those sacrifices effectively to honor God while you're studying. And the second one is always have some other form of Bible reading with your quizzing. Memorizing your verses should not be the only time that you're in the Word. So every single day you have to be in the Word in some other way where you're not trying to make a cross-reference and you're not trying to memorize it and kind of take yourself away from that. And the third thing, which one of my coaches helped me with, is find a commentary on the verses. And for Psalms, like Brother Seagraves wrote a book that just goes verse by verse. I'll have the verse and right underneath it, it's like a paragraph, not a lot at all, explaining what it meant. And that helped me so much, especially as a senior quizzer. So 15 minutes of my studying was spent in that, trying to understand the verses, and that helped me a lot. And the fourth thing, get like a journal and write down as you're studying. I said this earlier, but I like to write down what I studied, and that helps me to get things done and be effective. But write down what God speaks to you as you study, what kind of feelings you get, what you figure out about that verse, because I know all of us quizzes have been there where we're quoting a verse and all of a sudden it makes sense. And you're like, I never thought about that verse in that way. And it's a revelation that God gave you. Write it down, write how you were feeling. I love looking back on my journals from my quizzing days just for nostalgia's sake, if nothing else. And getting back into that mindset, it's important to write all that down. And it's really helpful to kind of make study time a little bit more meaningful and to help you be more effective. And I think those things really helped me. So I try and encourage quizzers to do that.
That's a great way to sign off, Megan. We've had an awesome podcast today. Thank you for being the second BQChats podcast. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
It was great. I appreciate this. This is awesome.
Oh, well, I hope it reaches anyone that could benefit from it. I only started this for the people that would appreciate it. I don't care if it's 3 people or 1,000. It doesn't really matter. I just want to help anybody. And you guys, you and Eric, and I have a long line of people I'm excited to have on, but all of you have so many good things to say, so many inspirational things, so many educational things, motivational. You guys are great. So thank you for coming on. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your night, and we'll get this up and running soon. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.